In a world of magic and monsters, Krylancelo Finrandi and his foster sister Azalie Cait-Sith were once promising students of sorcery at the famous Tower of Fangs. But an experiment gone wrong turns Azalie into a dragon. The Tower elders chase Azalie away to cover up the incident, but this enraged Finrandi and makes him strike out on his own. He vowed to return Azalie to her normal state. A few years passed. Finrandi changed his name to Orphen. He meets Azalie again with no way to restore her body, but a group of SOE=archerers are hunting her down. Follow as Finrandi tries to save Azalie from the past and try to find a way to return her to her human state. The continent of Kisalhima has been invaded by dragons for the past 1,000 years. The dragons chased away the tiny dwarves that lived in the land. And then, in a weird mating ceremony, the humans bred with the dragons and sorcerers were born. Finrandi was a young sorcerer studying in the Tower of Fangs with his sister Azalie as sorcerers. A certain night, a failed experiment turned Azalie into a dragon. Ever since then, Finrandi changed his name to Orphen and set out from the Tower of Fangs to look for a way to turn his sister back into a human. 5 years after the failed experiment incident, Orphen became a money-lending sorcerer in a developed town of Totokanta. He chased down some dwarven debtors like an adult chasing babies when a police officer sees them and tried to arrest the debtors as they are criminals. The police officer tried to arrest them, but they evaded capture like skilled rats and caused civilian casualties. Orphen chastises her for trying to make an arrest with civilian casualties. He healed the casualty, and the officer let him off the hook for casting spells in public. Later in the evening, Orphen went to his usual freeloader spot and was eating dinner. The waiter was excited to see Orphen as his mother also came from a line of sorcerers, and he was interested in studying at the Tower of Fangs. Orphen offered to teach him a few spells for a fee, but the bartender discouraged him from trying to con his son while still owing a huge debt to the bar. The next day, the dwarves find a way to return Orphen's money to him, on the condition that he does the job with them, and they split the earnings. 50-50, he agreed. Meanwhile, Orphen's former master was discussing with another sorcerer about the appearance of the Chaos Dragon, or Azalie after 5 years. Soon after, some sorcerers were dispatched to hunt the Chaos Dragon, but she evades all their attacks and flies off into the distance to Totokanta. In the city, the dwarves were trying to run a romance scam with some noble ladies of the Everlasting family. They gave him a dumb, fake name. However, the ladies don't fall for it and excuse themselves to the ladies' room for a quick powder check. The second daughter of the family, Krylancelo, comes out and calls them out on their scam. She also told them that they lady and the mother have known about the scam since the beginning and have gone to retrieve weapons from the armory to teach them a lesson. Finrandi tried to cook up a fake story about the Continental Sorcerers Association, but it isn't believable. The dwarves blamed Orphen for bringing them into the romance scam. Orphen casts a spell angrily at the dwarves. Krylancelo saw it and inquired whether he studied at the Tower of Fangs. She remembered seeing some messengers from the tower talk to her father when he was still alive. Soon after, Orphen's former master, Childman, enters Totokanta and is met by Hartia, one of his students. The sorcerers were chasing the Chaos Dragon as it passed the town. Just as Orphen and Krylancelo were discussing, they heard a loud thud and the building shook. The affected building was the armory located besides the main building. Krylanc's sister and mother were inside the armory when the dragon struck. Orphen uses sorcery to open the door and comes face to face with his dragonified sister. He recognized her instantly and called out to her, but she was here for another business. The dragon blew a fireball and it burnt the chest in front of Orphen, revealing a sword. The dragon picked the sword and flew away. As she flies away, the sorcerers appear and prepare their spells to shoot. Orphen saw them and immediately ran to fight them. He fended off a few sorcerers with sweet kung fu skills, and then his master recognized him but went on to shoot his spell at the Chaos Dragon. Orphen also shoots his famed Sword of Light, and this lets the dragon escape. Moments after, Orphen and his former master and friends stood at a standoff. As the dragon was escaping, Orphen was in a Mexican standoff with the sorcerers. He told them that the Chaos Dragon was his sister. As he said that, the dragon lifted up its head and roared. She then spit a ball of fire at Orphen, but he uses sorcery to dismantle the fire. The dragon lady took the sword she came for and flew away. Orphen called for his dragon sister to come back as he chased after her. Later, as Orphen was sleeping, he remembered how it used to be while he and Azalie were still at the Tower of Fangs before the failed experiment. He remembered the training with Childman, and how he and Azalie used to relate with their former colleagues. However, the dwarves woke him up and accused him of letting the police throw them in jail.
Okay.
The dwarves meet him to break them out of jail, but Orphen isn't ready to be a wanted criminal just yet. Orphen then began to tell the dwarves his villain backstory. He and Azalie were orphans raised in the Tower of Fangs, as is most of the sorcerers there. Orphen then told them of the failed experiment and his journey trying to turn the dragon back to human form. Orphen lamented that he cannot find a solution to Azalie's problem unless he knows what type of sorcery he used. Just then, Hartier appeared and takes him to meet Master Childman. He was greeted coldly by the Master. Hartier then starts to explain the events that happened after the experiment failed. Orphen asked his former master about the type of experiment that he and Azalie were doing. Childman told him that they were trying to activate the Sword of Baldanders. Childman was also the one that ordered that the sword be sealed in the everlasting family armory. Childman believed that Azalie has been unconscious like he was for 5 years and just regained it. He then tried to enlist the help of Orphen to track and kill the dragon version of Azalie. Orphen refuses. Hartier appealed to him to reconsider, as this might be a way for Orphen to return back to the tower. Childman told Orphen that he has assembled a dragon squad team to deal with the dragon tonight, as he has already attached a tracking spell on the sword and can track it no matter how far the dragon went. Childman informed Orphen that the only way to see his sister again was to align with them. The next day, Orphen packs his stuff from the motel he's staying and then helped Clyam to repair the destroyed armory. He coyly asked for payment, and she gave him a ring that Azalie once had. Orphen then set out to find his sister and run away with her before they kill her. Orphen soon arrived at the city gate and met up with Childman. He was put in the vanguard team to lead as he is an expendable asset. He saw his former comrades and they set out together. As they moved, he vowed to protect Azalie no matter what. The illegal band of sorcerers continued down a forest road for what seemed like forever. They all prepared for the real challenge, battling the dragon. Meanwhile, the dwarves and Clyam followed from a distance. She discharged them from jail to help Orphen. After walking a few miles, Orphen purposely lagged behind at the stream taking water. He then took a different route into the forest. He trusts his instinct and shouts his sister's name twice. The sky darkened immediately and she responded. Her response sparked a forest fire. Azalie showed herself. She then shot a fireball at Orphen. He dodged it and tried to jog the memory of a dragon with words. However, she continues to attack him and he raises a shield to defend herself. The dragon pushed Orphen back. Just then, different spells came flying at Azalie. Orphen looks back in surprise to see Childman and the other sorcerers. The sorcerers try and subdue the dragon mentally with white sorcery and do damage with black sorcery, but Azalie the dragon killed them by the droves. Orphen took the Sword of Baldanders and ran away with it. Hartier chased after him. Hartier soon caught up with Orphen and they battle, but Clyam and the dwarves come running and swung a sword to Hartier's head, allowing Orphen to gain the upper hand. Orphen promised that no one else would die again and goes to help Childman with the dragon. However, Childman betrayed and stabbed Orphen, and then killed the dragon with chaos magic. Orphen rushed to the dead body of the dragon where the dragon told him some information with its dying breath. The next day, Orphen ambushed Childman's wagon and demanded to speak to him. Orphen then revealed in a shocking turn of events that he knew that it was Azalie's spirit in Childman's body. Childman, or should I say Azalie, was surprised that it took this long for him to find out. Azalie then explained all that happened to her after the failed experiment. She lost consciousness and fell into a coma for 5 years. She switched bodies with Childman when he tried to come after her when he woke up. Pseudo-Azalie then went on to explain to Orphen that she wanted to use the sword to return back to normal, but Orphen is set on defeating her for Childman's sake. Azalie tried to use her body to tempt Orphen, but he does not fall for it. They begin to fight, and Azalie mysteriously drops her weapon, giving Orphen the chance to slash her. He told her that he swallowed the ring from earlier. He then promised her that he will make her wish to be human again come true. Soon after, Orphen told his sister the true reason why Childman went after her. When he woke up, Azalie was devastated and promised to change for the better. Azalie leaves for the Tower of Fangs in a man's body while Orphen remained in the city. Before the failed dragonification experiment, Finrandi, now known as Orphen, and Azalie had a stellar life at the Tower of Fangs. Azalie was known as the Chaos Witch, and Finrandi was acknowledged as the successor of the Razor's Edge. Their classes consisted of magic learning, studying in the library, and sparring where Azalie excelled. One of the times where Master Childman went on explorations with other sorcerers, they spent their time sparring all morning. Finrandi couldn't defeat his sister. They later went out to class and discovered that their master was away. One of her classmates, Comicron, whose name sounds like Comic-Con, pulled them outside to show them his latest Robocop invention. Unfortunately, the robot was also running amok in the school and returning sorcerers back to the sender. Finrandi decided to take matters into his own hands and bound the robot with his spell before a prefect destroyed the robot core. The next day, Azalie woke Finrandi up early so that they could go and visit the graves of the children that they were in the same orphanage with. The orphanage was in a town that was attacked by bandits. The town was now inhabitable after the attack. After they paid their respects at the grave, Azalie mysteriously disappeared, and Finrandi started to look for her everywhere. Finrandi searched all over town, but he couldn't find her. He assumed that she went to rest in one of the houses after being tired from walking. Just then, a female voice called out to him, telling him that she had kidnapped Azalie. The voice demanded that he went back to the orphanage if he wanted his sister back. Finrandi went to the orphanage, but he was hounded by many spells, but he defeated them all. He then went to the first floor, and there he found his sister's severed head on the floor. A female full-body version of Blackface then appeared to him, telling him that she had killed his sister. She also berated him for not being able to protect his sister. Finrandi then decided to cast a spell destroying the apparition. This spell destroyed the house along with it. Meanwhile, Azalie was alive in a separate house controlling the apparition. She was surprised that she couldn't defeat her brother. She came out, and Finrandi was surprised that she was alive. She told him all that happened, and he was not too happy about it. All these memories and his battle with his sister after 5 years was playing in Orphen's mind as he rode a wagon out of Totokanta. However, he wasn't alone in the wagon. Magic, the bartender's son, and Clyom were hiding in the wagon and not doing a good job of it. Orphen had known about the scheme ever since Clyom gave him a wagon in exchange for fixing up the everlasting estate. Magic said he had cleared it with his dad to travel with Orphen, and Clyom left a letter for her mother telling her she wanted to see the world and meet new people. Magic also promised to pay Orphen a monthly fee, and Clyom promised to handle the cooking, although she had no idea how to cook. Orphen then revealed that his destination is Tafram, the Tower of Fangs to be precise. Their journey will take them through the dreaded Fenrir forest. They soon get to the entrance of the Fenrir forest and journey into the forest. Their journey will be about 3 weeks long, so they decided to take a quick break to rest and bathe and prepare for the journey into the forest, as they might not be able to do that once inside the forest proper. Clyom was taking her bath while Magic was keeping watch. However, Magic was also using a spell to spy on Clyom. Orphen found out and got pissed. He warned him not to do that again. Orphen is impressed that Magic was able to get the hang of conjuring a spell within 2 weeks, while he was able to conjure his first spell after 3 years and 4 months. Nighttime came and they stopped to camp at a clearing. Orphen complained about the hiding rascals finishing his food supply. After placating Orphen, Magic decided to go look for food. He promised he wouldn't wander far and not get lost. Soon after, he got lost and met a woman named Fienna. They struck up a conversation, and she promised to help him get back to his master. Soon after, a couple of men with pitchforks and swords came out of the bushes to slay the sorcerer. The Lady Fienna was also part of them. The leader of them men also dispatched some other men to go and deal with Orphen and Clyom. Magic tricked the men and tried to escape with Fienna, but he got shot with a gun. Later that night, the men reported to their leader that the men dispatched to capture Orphen haven't returned. Meanwhile, at their camp, the dwarves were also captured and were used as unpaid labor.
A few moments later.
Soon after, Orphen and Clyom snuck to the men's camp. Orphen discovers that the camp is run by the Deep Dragon, an organization who hates sorcerers. He then goes on to explain to Clyom, who was always bad in school, the two main faiths on the continent: the Kimluck Church that worship the three goddesses known as the Weird Sisters, and the Dragon Faiths, who worship the dragons. He also explained the centuries-long feud between the Dragon Faith and the sorcerers, where they hunted dragon, but that didn't happen anymore. Soon after Orphen infiltrated the camp, a huge pillar of fire came out of the ground, and after it died, a huge wolf stood in the spot. Orphen was surprised to see a Fenrir, a deep dragon that looks more like a wolf in the camp. Orphen told Clyom to run to the nearest ranger station and report what was happening while he tried to save Magic. As he was making his plans, the guards discovered him and pointed a gun at him, although he didn't show any violent action, and guns were banned by the royal family. The guards shoot, and Orphen tries to escape. However, as he was fighting, he was hit by a knife to the shoulder, but he continued fighting and defeated the men. As he was about to fight the last man, the Fenrir appeared behind him. Orphen tried to escape, but the Fenrir spoke to him. Hearing the dragon's voice, Orphen fell down to his feet in pain. Later that night, the people in the camp were gathered at the square chanting a weird mantra to the dragon Fianna. The shrine maiden brought the words of the dragon and placated the people. Later, she appeared to Orphen in a dream just before he woke up and told him what he must do. Orphen woke up and was visited by the village elder MacDougal, who threatened to kill him. Another man named Salua came in and discouraged him. MacDougal then decided to torture Orphen the next day. As they left, Fianna brought food for Magic, who she treated in her hut. Magic was dressed in a female nightgown. Soon after, MacDougal came in and threatened to inflict injury on her if she doesn't help him find the heart of the forest. Magic tried to stand up for Fianna, but MacDougal threatened him with the gun. Fianna protected Magic and promised to do what the village elder wanted. Magic tried to get Fianna to run away with him and meet up with his master. She then sheepishly broke the news that his master had been captured and took Magic to see Orphen in the camp prison. Later, Orphen found out that the dwarves were in the prison too, and they were the reason that their cover was blown. Orphen then tried to kill them with a spell. Just then, a man named Salua came into the jail. He then tried to fight Orphen, and he knew his former name. Meanwhile, Clyom arrived at the camp with the rangers. The rangers informed her that they have been warned to stay away from the camp, but she doggedly decided to go rescue her friends herself. Similarly, Orphen and his attacker were still fighting. Orphen recognized the glass sword Salua carried, pegging him as an assassin of the Kimluck Church. Just then, Clyom entered the prison and struck Salua with her sword scabbard, knocking him out. Orphen was surprised that she came to find him after telling her to wait for him at the ranger station. Moments after, Fianna entered the prison and saw Salua and Magic knocked out. Fianna begged Orphen to escape from the camp and take Salua and Magic as he went. She revealed that MacDougal was formerly a leader of the Kimluck Church before founding the Dragon Faith, and Salua was sent to assassinate him. Orphen warned her that trying to find the heart of the forest will lead to death, but she has made peace with her fate. Orphen rejected her fate and promised to help her, and soon after, Salua woke up to Orphen standing above him with the glass sword. Orphen asked Salua to lead him to MacDougal. Soon after, they arrive and bang open MacDougal's door, which jolts him from a sweet dream. Orphen asked MacDougal to release Fianna in exchange for the name of the assassin after his life. Salua saw the betrayal and launched an attack. MacDougal also saw his chance to attack. Both of them attack, but Orphen defeated them. Orphen asked again, but MacDougal refused. The village elder then tried to shoot his gun, but it funnily backfired and exploded, shooting bullet pellets into his body. MacDougal died and Salua leaves, having seen the end of his job. Meanwhile, Clyom was still trying to get the rangers to attack the camp. Just then they saw a Fenrir puppy. The rangers attacked it, but it jumped into Clyom's hands for safety. The rangers soon ran after, discovering that the mother might be nearby. The villagers found out that Elder MacDougal was dead. They looked to the Shrine Maiden to lead them, but Orphen rebukes them, telling them to make their own decisions. The villagers decide to finish Elder MacDougal's wishes and try to kidnap Orphen to lead them there or burn at the stake. Just then, the Fenrir appears to Fianna in a vision, telling her to leave the camp before he destroyed it. Fianna urged Magic to go and follow his heart. he soon meets with his master, who was trying to evade capture by the villagers. They soon got cornered on the roof of a building, and Orphen used a risky spell to teleport to a safe place. Meanwhile, Orphen sent Salua to rescue Fienna and take her out of the village while they chase him. The villagers saw that Orphen and Magic didn't travel far and tried to catch up to them. Just then a blue ball of light exploded over the village. The deep dragon had started destroying the village. Orphen tried to use the dragon's child that was with Clyom as a bargaining chip, but the dragon called his bluff. He then offered to fight the dragon for the lives of the people. Orphen used a gun he took from one of the villager earlier and shot the dragon, but it didn't work out. The dragon then started to torture Orphen, but he weakly cast a light spell obstructing the dragon's view. The pain stopped instantly. Orphen discovered that the dragon cannot cast spells on things he cannot see. Orphen told Magic to cast the spell he was using to spy on Clyom, and it blocks the dragon's field of vision. After a long and hard battle, Orphen finally subdued the dragon, but his attack wasn't strong enough to kill it fully. Just then, Fienna appeared and tried to nullify the dragon's power at the cost of her own life. The dragon attacked her, but Clyom got angry and commanded the dragon baby with her to consume the mother, which it did. But before it died, Fenrir the dragon issued them a grave warning. The next morning, the dwarves came out of the pit they hid in, but Orphen caught them before they could escape. Fienna and the rest of the villagers decided to travel and find a new place to settle, while Orphen and his band of misfits continued their journey, having lost 2 days. Magic asked Orphen why the dragon couldn't see through the attack that he did despite being able to read thoughts. Orphen then told him that he hid his thoughts for a moment using mental control taught to him in the Tower of Fangs. Meanwhile, Clyom brought the baby Fenrir along on their journey. As their journey progressed, Orphen couldn't help but remember his time at the Tower of Fangs. Soon enough, they could see the tower in the distance. Magic was very excited to start learning at the tower. Meanwhile, in the tower, the sorcerers were worried about the elders being killed. They recently reported the 5th one killed the day before. Forta noted that it was Childman's dragon hunting squad that kick-started the series of killing. Soon after, Fort went back to his office and spoke to Letitia about the recent killings. He told her the description of the assassin. Fort also suspected Orphen of the killings, as they've not seen Master Childman since his last encounter with Orphen. Meanwhile, with them being close to the tower, Orphen decided to rest the horses for a while on the outskirts of town. However, Clyom and Magic got them into trouble with the rangers by blowing up part of the forest. The ranger promised not to report them. Just as Orphen was about to leave, the ranger slumped and died. Orphen was surprised and knew that it was a skilled sorcerer who could have done this. Orphen went back to the wagon and was pondering on how the ranger was killed, while Magic and Clyom and the baby dragon were by the fire. Just then, the wagon exploded. Magic and Clyom were worried for Orphen, but he was fine. They looked up and saw the hooded assassin floating in the sky like Superman. Magic tried a spell, but it didn't do much damage. Orphen also found out that the hooded assassin was also the one who killed the ranger earlier. Orphen and the assassin started fighting, but Orphen couldn't seem to land a successful hit on the assassin. Clyom ordered the baby dragon to attack, but the assassin was waiting for that and used that moment to attack. Just then, a knife entered the assassin's shoulder and he missed his target. Letitia, or Tish, a former comrade of Orphen, appeared from the bushes and wanted to join in on the fight. By missing his attack, the assassin's hood got blown off, and everyone was surprised to see that he had the same face as Orphen. He immediately teleported, leaving everyone with their mouths hanging low. Tish takes them into the town with her wagon. They are stopped at the gate, but Tish cleared it up with the guards. Tish brought them to her house in Tafram and then went to the tower to inform Fort that Orphen was not the culprit. Later that night, while waiting for Tish, Orphen was reminiscing about how Lai used to be by looking at pictures of him when he was little along with Clyom and Magic. After they retired to bed, he was at the balcony with his former cat Nora. However, his thoughts were interrupted by his evil doppelganger. The original and the clone both paced around each other and prepared to fight. Orphen was fighting to protect his name and legacy. The assassin was fighting to prove that he was the true successor. Tish reported to Fort that the assassin looked like Orphen from 5 years ago. She also told him that nobody in the tower could defeat the assassin at the moment. Meanwhile, the assassin declared himself as the true Krylancelo and proclaimed his loyalty to nobody but one person. He then disappeared, and Orphen is left alone to think on what just happened. Clyomp and the baby dragon were spying on them all this while. The next day, Tish hasn't come home from the tower. Meanwhile, Orphen is at the fountain thinking. He thought about Azalie and what she was doing. Orphen thought about the recent happenings and hopes that Azalie wasn't involved with them. Soon after, Tish returned from the tower. Her students gave her a birthday present and she introduced them to Orphen.
A few moments later.
Later that evening, Orphen met up with Tish while the dwarves and Clyomp, and after beating the dwarves, went about in the city to find information on the assassin. Clyomp was pissed at the dwarves for trying to freeload on Tish and Orphen, but unknown to them, the assassin was in the shadows listening to what they were saying. Tish and Orphen discussed the disorder within the tower and how Fort tried to curb it by taking control. Tish thought that the clone was working with Master Childman, and both of them are trying to take back control of the tower, but Orphen told her that Master Childman isn't coming back. Tish asks Orphen to share what he knew about the situation that happened at Totokanta and why Master Childman has been missing for more than 2 months. Meanwhile, as Clyomp and the dwarves were eating a snack in the city, the assassin disguised as someone from the dragon faith kidnapped both Clyomp and her pet baby dragon with sedated darts. The dwarves quickly came to report to Magic, who in turn reported to Orphen and Tish. Magic also reported that the assassin was last seen entering Master Childman's house. Orphen knew it was a bait to try and lure him out. He sets out to leave and Magic promises to follow him, but Tish dissuades it. Orphen thought about what he was about to do. Magic worried that the fake clone might have killed Clyomp and her pet, but Orphen disagrees. He then steps out of Tish's house and started going to Master Childman's former house. Magic waits on the steps of Tish's house, waiting for his master like a scorned lover. One of this's apprentices came to meet him and told him about the stories he had heard about the legend of Krylancelo before he became Orphen. 5 years ago, Krylancelo almost killed a fellow sorcerer of the tower, just around the time he was to be nominated as one of the 13 apostles. Later, Orphen was walking around town and saw a shop he used to patronize 5 years ago still there. He then started to reminisce about the old times with his master and friends. He then arrived at Childman's house and vowed to fight the version of himself that has no flaws. Meanwhile, Magic is trying to go after Orphen and help him. Tish also joined him, but her apprentice voiced his complaint. Tish reassured him that they will be fine. Orphen broke down the estate gate and then blew a hole through the roof. He then entered through the roof like Batman and entered an empty room. The clone soon appeared, and without much talking, they started hurling a barrage of spells at each other. They dodged each spell impressively and fall down into the room below. The clone tells Orphen that he will not be able to kill him unless he gets serious and kills him, and if he doesn't kill him, he will not be able to save Clyomp and her pet. The clone then revealed that he was created by Azalie, and she believed that Orphen would come back to his former self by fighting his clone. But the clone believed that if Orphen goes back to his former self, he will end up hurting Azalie, and that was his reason for fighting Orphen. The clone also wants to kill Orphen because there cannot be two of the same person, and he wanted to have Azalie to himself. They each brought out knives and then launched at each other with knives and spells. The clone stabs his knife into Orphen's shoulder. Orphen responds by slicing the clone's wrist and rendering him knifeless. They both heal themselves and face each other again. Orphen launched his second attack and shoots his knife as a decoy weapon. He then ran up to his clone and bombards him with lots of blows in hopes of giving him a concussion. However, the clone quickly recovers and launched his own attack in the form of a spell. The attack knocked Orphen out.
Few moments later.
Meanwhile, the police officers are armed and outside Childman's mansion. When Tish and Magic arrive, Tish calmed the officers down and informed them that she will take care of the people fighting inside the house as they are sorcerers. After, Orphen woke up the voice of Azalie softly telling him that he has grown. He jumped up and asks her to show herself. Instead, the clone appeared and revealed the technique that Azalie used to bring him to life, called the Killing Doll. Azalie also used the Sword of Baldanders on the doll to make it look like Orphen, and also enabled it to use any technique Orphen could use as at 5 years ago. The clone then brought out the Sword of Baldanders and readied to use it to fight. Just then, Orphen looked back and saw Clyomp, bound by a paralysis spell. Orphen decided to use his trump card that Childman taught him to outsmart the clone, and it worked. Orphen subdued the clone and overcame it. Meanwhile, Tish and Magic are being as careful as a mouse as they make their way to where Orphen was. Moments after, the clone recovered and launched a spell at Orphen. Orphen responded with one of his own and eventually overcame the clone, destroying its body and revealing it to actually be a doll. Tish and Magic sense that the battle is over and rush to find out who won. Soon after the battle ended, Azalie appeared. She told Orphen that she was scared of facing him, which was why she sent the doll. She also told him that she cannot kill him as he is the only successor to Childman. Azalie then revealed that Master Childman trained him the most to be a trump card in killing her. Orphen disagreed and stated that he has always loved and admired Azalie as his sister. Azalie told him she wants to go and find out the true intentions of Master Childman, and she needed a partner like Orphen by her side. But before he responds, she leaves as Clyom and her pet are waking up already. She told Orphen that her next stop is Kimluck. She then teleported and Orphen fainted. Tish and Magic run towards him and try to ensure his safety. Tish and Magic took Orphen and Clyom back to the house and treated them where they both recovered. Meanwhile, another assassin attacked the Tower of Fangs looking for the Browning family atlas. The sorcerer told him that it was loaned out to Childman a few years ago. Orphen decided to leave his room. As he came out of the closet that he called a room, he was also attacked by an assassin asking for the Browning family atlas. The assassin disappeared just as Clyom and Magic show up with dinner. The next morning, Orphen asked to go to the tower to help Magic with his enrollment. Tish then showed him the new update on his status in the tower. He had been reinstated as a high-ranking sorcerer, with Tish vouching for him. Later, Orphen and Magic went to the Tower of Fangs, while one of Tish's apprentices showed Clyom around like a tourist in New York. While on the tourist tour, her guide explained the truth behind the Tower of Fangs and the hierarchy of power in the school. He told her that the only class to obtain power more than any other class was the Childman class. However, on their way to the tower, Orphen, Magic and Tish got ambushed by a group of people wearing masks and throwing stones and bottles. Orphen rushes out and defeats all the attackers like a superhero. After the battle, Orphen tried to question one of them to see why they attacked the W3 Agon. Just then, another sorcerer wearing a half mask like Two-Face in Batman conjured a spell and murdered the person that Orphen was questioning. The killer turned out to be a former comrade of Orphen named Hydrant. Hydrant then insulted Orphen, causing Orphen to attack, but Hydrant easily evaded the attack. They soon get to the school. Orphen met with Forte, while Tish helped Magic with his enrollment. Forte explained to Orphen that a certain class in the tower called the UR class has set their sights on destroying the Childman class. They've put a spy as Fort's secretary. They killed some members of the Dragon Faith, and they tried to kill Fort by putting poison in his tea. Orphen didn't wait to hear the rest. He ran out of Forte's office and barged into the UR class. But nobody was there except the master Wuar Kurlane, who just happened to be in his blind spot.
2,000 years later.
Later that evening, Orphen and the gang were returning from the tower, having completed their business there. Clyom and her guides were also returning from their tour of the city. Clyom noticed a man clad in black standing on the roof of a building. Just as Orphen's wagon was entering the street to their estate, they saw Clyom lying on the floor like a slain maiden, and the guides surrounding her. Orphen rushed to help and was told that she was attacked by someone whose description matched that of a stabber. The attacker ran towards the city before they could get there. Orphen started to chase after the attacker, but Tish stopped him and went in his stead. Later that night, Tish tracked the stabber to an abandoned building in a dark part of town where another stabber was waiting for her. She recognized the two stabbers to be Hydrant and Swain of the UR class. They battled and tried to capture Tish, but she successfully evaded them. However, she lost some fingers in the process. Just as they were about to capture her, Azalie came to her rescue and protected her. The stabbers retreat even as Tish fainted from the pain like the first time you took injections. Azalie then stopped the bleeding on Tish's severed fingers and bandaged them. Soon after, Orphen brought Tish back to the house and laid her on the bed. When Tish awoke, she told Orphen that she imagined that it was Azalie that saved her. Orphen then promised to get revenge for Tish, but she calmed him down and told him not to act rashly. She advised him to contact Fort and report what happened to him. On his way to contact Fort, he met Azalie by the fountain like it was Christmas. She then told him that the Yuor class are implementing the final step of their plan by stabbing all the elders who felt threatened by the recent deaths in the tower. Azalie then explained the true value of the book that the stabbers were after. The Yuor class wanted to use the book to take control of the tower now that Master Childman and most of his class aren't at the tower anymore. Azalie told Orphen to find a way to protect Tish and the rest, as the Yuor class will try and take them off the board. She also showed him how she'd been traveling so quickly. Azalie left for the tower, but not without telling Orphen where the Browning Atlas was. It was with Magic, his student. Azalie told him he might be able to use it to strike a deal with the Yuor class if he gets to the book first. He was about to go to the tower, but Clyom and Magic offered to follow him and help. Surprisingly, he agreed and told them to tag along as anchors for him.
A few moments later.
On their way to the tower, Orphen explained everything that happened and what led to it, but Clyom summarized it as the results of Magic stealing a book. They scaled the wall and infiltrated the tower's premises. As they snuck through the halls, Clyom suggested that her pet Deep Dragon used his magic to destroy the place. Orphen disagreed. Instead, he decided to get to the guard room and work his way from there. They soon arrive at the guard room, but Orphen found out that there was nobody inside. Just then, Orphen was attacked by Hydrant and Swain. Clyom called on her pet to save them, and it conjured a large blast of sorcery that teleported them to different parts of the tower, like a game level. Orphen and Hydrant escaped and face off with each other. Orphen warned him that he might attract the guards with such a display of power, but Hydrant wasn't worried, as he was part of the upper echelon and could write it off as him settling a misunderstanding between the Yuor class and the Childman class. Hydrant doesn't care about the feud between the Childman and Yuor classes. He only cared about repaying Orphen for the scar he inflicted on his face 5 years ago when he got summoned to begin the trial of being a 13 apostle. They launched their attack and resumed their battle. Meanwhile, Clyom was just waking up from the magical blast from earlier. A sorcerer walked up to her and tried to harm her, but her pet protected her. Also, Magic was transported to another part of the tower alongside Swain. As they begin their fight, Magic dropped the Browning Atlas, and Swain picked it up. Magic decided to fight Swain for the book. He threw a fireball at Swain, but it missed. Swain also missed his attack on Magic and found out that Magic could use Soacial Magic, a secret technique of Master Childman after seeing Orphen use it a few times. However, Magic has run out of stamina after using 2 high-level spells one after another. Just as Swain was about to finish, Fort arrived and shot Swain till he ran like a coward. Meanwhile, Hydrant and Orphen switch from launching attacks to close combat, and Orphen has the upper hand. He tackled Hydrant to the ground and overcame him. In that moment, Clyom got teleported to where Orphen was, and they both entered the room where Master Yuor was with the rest of his students. Yuor told Orphen that Swain risked his life to obtain the Browning Atlas, which was now in his possession, but Orphen told him that he had switched the Atlas with Clyom's diary. Uwar ordered his men to attack Orphen, but he defeated them all. Just as he was finishing the last man, Fort entered and helped him. Fort then took Master Shuor and his students into custody for questioning on many crime charges. Just as Master Yuor was trying to wiggle his way out, Azalie appeared, which caught all of them by surprise. Master Yuor tried to attack Azalie, but Orphen defended her by using a special move he learnt from Master Childman. Azalie then went on to erase every memory of her from the minds of Master Yuor and his students as they were taken to custody. Orphen found out that Fort was already working with Azalie, and Fort knew of her plans. With the arrest, Fort was finally able to take control of the tower, and it experienced peace for the first time in a while. Thanks for joining us on this magical journey along great forests and high towers. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and tap the notifications bell. And remember, you can do anything you put your mind to. Also, family might not be by blood, but family is everything. Until next time, don't stop growing.